Hello, it's Rafael Gutierrez, and today I'm going to talk about three different striking. One is the second finger out, so you can actually hit with one knuckle. The other one is using the middle finger in it, so you can use one knuckle. And the other one is the spear hand, where you're actually coming in and hitting with these here. Now, one thing you'll notice is I actually have a modification of it because it works for me. I tell people is make sure that when you're dealing with your martial arts, make sure they work for you. Now, for me, the ultimate test of any strike is on Makiwara, so I will be using my Makiwara. Before I do that, I do want to talk about certain things. A lot of people talk, and either they don't realize that they're pretty much just repeating a marketing slogan, or they don't realize that what they're saying doesn't make sense based on what people are seeing. I'm going to start with the whole martial arts. You have a lot of people who have their own schools who talk about how these martial arts don't work, or that one doesn't work, and only mine works. And advertisement. What's funny about these is most of these people are in their 20s. Now, I don't mean this badmouth someone who's in their 20s, but if you ask anyone who's in their 30s about the difference between being in your 20s and 30s, the amount of knowledge you pick up between 20 and 30 is more than you picked up from 10 to 20. There's just a lot more information. There's a lot more life that you have to take care of when you're between your 20 and 30. And even when you're between your 30 and 40, there's more you have to learn. And I haven't gotten to 50 yet, but I'm pretty sure in 50 there's a lot more I'm going to learn that I don't know yet. And it's going to build on my knowledge. So it's going to get bigger and better. So a lot of times when you see these 20-year-olds, oh, this martial art sucks, you should really be asking yourself, why do you say that? And a lot of them will say, well, based on my experience on martial arts, this is what I've seen. Now, this is a 20-year-old a lot of times. They're young, and I'm not play down 20-year-olds, but this is actually one of the things that you have to pay attention to, the age. So if this person is 20 and they started training in martial arts at 18, given age, that means that they have 12 years that they have learned it. Now, I've been training in karate for, I usually say 21 years. Truth is, when I turned 21, it started to become serious. It really started becoming serious. I spent a lot of money. I spend a lot of money. I buy books like you wouldn't believe. For instance, right now I have Karate 1.0 on my desk. I also have Shoshin Nagamini's Essence of Okinawan Karate. And so I bought a lot of books to see what other people have written. And that's actually really important. Besides that, I've also gotten a degree in medicine. And I teach anatomy, physiology, microbiology. I've even talked to clinical anatomy, and that does help me interpret my martial arts. I've also spent a lot of money going to places to learn from people I consider among the best. I go to Okinawa, and usually when I go there, I spend about a month. Now, one of my times there, I spent 3 months. As a professor, I have the luxury where I do have breaks where I can pretty much go anywhere and not have to worry about it. And it does allow me to get a better understanding of martial arts. I also talk to other people. Now, I took a trip not too long ago, I have to mention the Off the Rails book, which on January 28th, I'm going to be on exhibit in the San Diego Central Library. Well, me and my book are, and hopefully I'll be able to talk a little bit about it. So one of the things that I would tell people is this. I spent a lot of money on learning and studying martial arts. I also did like I said, I did the trip where I wrote about it Off the Rails, where I ended up seeing other art. Truth is, what I end up seeing whenever I see other arts is benefits to my own art. I don't see a competition, and most of the people I've talked to don't seem to see another art as a competition. Most of us tend to actually want to look at other arts, work together, and see how we can make our arts more our own. And so, I'm not a master of any arts. I don't even consider myself a master of any art. But what I will say is, in 21 years minimum, which is when I would say I started looking at martial arts seriously. Yes, before then, I did the basic karate at a strip mall. I did the basic boxing, and it really wasn't until I hit 21, until I met my friend of mine, which his name was Cyrus, that I really started looking at martial arts more seriously. And I also had the background in anatomy to actually see what was going on. So a lot of times it's like these people who are saying, oh, well, their martial arts sucks because they've mastered 10 martial arts. Well, they either must be amazing people who can learn faster than someone with a medical degree can learn in 20 years. Then that would only be for them to get to the level I'm at in karate. And then just imagine how far, all the different times that they had to spend on all these different arts to be able to say, I've learned 20 arts and I'm a master of 20 of them. If you don't find that as a little on the ridiculous side, that someone would say, yeah, I'm a master of 20 arts. Well, when you see these 20-year-olds saying, oh, well, I mastered 20 arts. Well, it really tells you the level of mastery that the schools they went to taught. I want you to pay attention. A lot of people are saying, this art sucks because it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work where? Like I said, I'm 20 years old. I used my clinical anatomy background to understand how different moves would actually work or not work. That's how I look at stuff. How are these people who are saying it doesn't work basing their understanding? I mean, there are some people who do different things. If you read karate stories, you have Motobu, who would go and pick fights to see what worked. Now you can do that. Some people go to MMA and test there. You can do that. The thing that I think is interesting is how many of these people who are actually competing at the world level of MMA are saying, well, no other art works but my own. I mean, a lot of them will say, oh, well, this art works for this, but not this. And even if you're using that, for safety reasons, you can't use certain things. And, a lot of people say, oh, well, this art doesn't win in MMA. Well, that's like saying, well, MMA doesn't work because if you put the guy in a Kwando championship, they wouldn't win. You have to look at you have to look at what things are being used at. The other thing that is interesting is when someone says martial arts suck, usually they're talking about a couple drills. And the drills are tools. They're learning tools. If the drill doesn't work for you, then I would ask you, why are you doing it? If it works for you, then hey, that's great. But if your drills aren't working for you, and you're saying that that's why martial arts suck, well, what's that saying about your intelligence? You don't use a drill that doesn't work for you. But also remember, these things are drills. You have to know how to use them correctly and why you're using them. So for instance, a lot of people will talk about, oh, Ippon Kumite doesn't work. It doesn't teach people for reality. Well, Ippon Kumite technically means one point. So it's the idea is you make one move to give you the point in that art. Now, why wouldn't that work? I mean, if you're talking about a technique where you're actually getting 1 point, and that's what you're going for, then the technique would work. It's just showing, okay, this is how you end up using this to get a point. Now let's change this a little. Let's say for your idea of martial arts, it follows mine, where every move should try to cause the most damage possible to the human body. Meaning you're not going for a point, but you're going for breaking a rib, clavicle, arm, head, facial bones. You're trying to make sure that the fight ends there. If you use Ippon Kumite, what you can actually do is you have the attack, and then you come in and use a move that's going to cause serious damage to your opponent. Now, the reason this is the way you would have to do this, is the reason, is because you want to be able to know that when something comes in, you're just going to come in, break whatever you're hitting, but you don't want to break your partner, so you do it in an Ippon style, so you realize, okay, this is where the target would be. Now, if you're using Ippon Kumite, what you can actually do is you have the attack, and then you come in and use a move that's going to cause serious damage to your opponent. Now, the reason this is the way you would have to do this, is because you want to be able to know that when something comes in, you're just going to come in, break whatever you're hitting, and forget about it. But you don't want to break your partner, so you do it in an Ippon style, so you realize, okay, this is where the target would be. If you're using Ippon Kumite to break the body, that's all you're learning to do with it. It works great. You're learning exactly where to put your fist, so something destroys your opponent. And that is one of the key things with karate. If you remember, you have the ikahiatsu principles, which is one punch ending. And so the thing is, a lot of people say, well, this art doesn't work because this drill doesn't work. Well, maybe they don't understand how the drill works. I like to cook, and I know how to cut with a knife, but I'm not a master chef. And when you look at a master chef's knife collection, it's huge. And there's some knives that I would be like, well, I don't know how to use this thing. I don't know what the purpose of a certain specific knife is. But in the hands of a master, that knife, that tool can do amazing things. If you don't know what a drill does, if you don't know what the tool that you're using does, it's not the art's fault, it's yours. There's another thing, and I'm going to talk about this. We have videos, and we can see what can and can't be done. And I don't know how many times I've seen people do stuff on Makiwara. Recently, I was in a forum where someone was showing different ways to use Makiwara, and someone said, no, you're not supposed to use it that way. Well, he was using it, and it was working. He actually showed that he had the power to move the Makiwara with each hit. The funny part is, if you say, well, that doesn't work because you can get an injury, well, let's see if you're right. Show us what evidence do you have that causes injury. Yes, there are certain things that will cause injury in Makiwara, and you want to be careful with that. I have a little video that you can watch on Makiwara if you're interested. But if someone's doing something and you say, no, you can't do that, well, they're doing it. That's the whole big thing. If I say, well, this can cause damage, I won't say this will. I'll say this can cause it because there are some people who will be able to do it without having damage. And there are some drills that are not made for beginners. And so with that, I actually do want to tell you about the 3 fists. The first one I'm going to talk about is the 1 knuckle, this one here. Now, the way a lot of people do it different. The way I like to do it is I like to actually make the fist, bring the finger out, and then bring this finger. So instead of being here, it comes here. That way it has a little bit of support. So so it doesn't collapse on me when I hit Makiwara. One of the things you'll notice is if you follow this line, you actually do have a relatively nice straight line with the wrist. A lot of people say, well, this one's actually better, and if you actually watch, yes, it does seem to have the same straight line with the wrist. The problem is if you actually hit with the wrist, this bone crosses over, so this one is a little more lined up, but this one will be just as effective, and you can't actually crumple your fingers up here, so you end up having, you don't have the finger going in when you hit something. I usually practice with this one, but this one should work just as well. The other one is the spear hand, which comes here. Again, what you see is, you see the line up here. Now I actually, when I hit Makiwara, I usually won't use this one. I'll usually open up my finger and hit like this. The reason is this way I actually have more, I feel I have more support. The other thing I'm going to tell you with those fists is I can actually develop a lot more power just with the regular fist. I'm going to hit something that I know I can break. I'm going to use this. But there are certain targets. Like I said, everything has a reason, and it's up to you to figure out how to use. It's up to you to understand how to use every technique, every tool at your availability. Now, for me, this one is actually really good for going for ribs and some soft targets. Now, there are a couple other fists, and I'll talk about those later. Now, this one, again, there are certain areas where you can break and cause permanent or serious injuries with going a spear hand. But it changes on what part of the body you're using. Now, a lot of people say, well, you can't do this. And like I said, I'm going to use the Makiwara to show you how I use it. So with that, I'll take a pause. One more time. This is, if you actually punch here, you can't get a lot of displacement by punching, just coming here. Now, you can hear the sound. The sound is actually some of the energy being released in the sound. If I go with a one knuckle punch, I can't hit with the same strength as I would with this here. But here, you can't get the movement of the Makiwara, not as much, because, well, your finger is going to be a lot more delicate than your two knuckles. You can use this one too, and again, you will get some of the movement, but it's pretty much the same basic thing. You'll end up feeling more of the pressure on the bones here than actually in anywhere else. Now, when you have a straight finger here, some people tell you come here, and yeah, you can do it. But for me, I actually prefer open it up a little. That way, when you hit, you can go a little in. Now, again, you're not going to get the same force in two fingers that you will in the fist. But depending on the site you're actually attacking, that actually can cause a lot more damage because of the pinpoint how you're actually going straight into one area. I hope this is something you guys will enjoy. And again, remember, be careful in your training.